Welcome back to the vlog. Kato here, and today we're playing cards. Thank you so much for joining us. A $300 buy-in at the 1-3 game, and 5 minutes into the session, pocket aces are tossed to me in the big blind. What a fantastic start. If you notice in the left-hand corner, I have the start time of the session up top, and then below I have the updating current time of the session. Does having both times help, or is it too much information on the screen? The cutoff bet's 13. The button makes the call. The small blind tosses his hand away quickly. Of course, I'm going to be putting in a 3-bet here. I know the player across the table is very adverse to calling 3-bets, but the player on my right will probably call one that's not too big, so I make it 40. The option is back to the original bettor. The gentleman across the table takes another look at his cards, pretty quick to give them up. The player on the button has a different style, though. She likes to get in the mix, be in on the action. And my aces have a customer. Remember, this is the first hand of the session. I was actually talking to a buddy, had to run back over the table to take the big blind, and this is what I get for it. The dealer prepares to reveal the flop, and it's king high, a beautiful board. My opponent's range is capped, so they don't have kings or jacks. The only hands I'm worried about are 8s and king jack. They could also have queen 10 suited, 9-10 suited, king x, jack x. A lot of hands I can get value from. I continue betting, make it 30, and my opponent races me into the pot, basically. Insta calls. Now I'm looking at that stack, sizing up how to get it all in on the river. A blank on the turn. I don't have to go big here. I just have to commit a portion of her stack so that she has a SPR she can't get away from, a stack to pot ratio that she can't get away from on the river. If she calls this bet, the pot's going to be about 4.5 times bigger than her stack. It's going to be really hard for her to toss basically anything with showdown value away. I bet a friendly 55. I want this bet to look like your grandma standing in the front doorway holding a little puppy and a basket of cookies. What more do you want? If that doesn't invite you into the house, I don't know what will. And she walks through the front door, makes the call. I'm jamming basically any river. The worst card in the deck would probably be like the 9 of hearts. But the ace of clubs comes instead. Interesting card. Queen 10 gets there, but now my hand is also much stronger. It beats 2 pair. It beats all the sets. I effectively have the nuts sans 16 combos of Queen 10, but there's a lot of worse hands that would call for value. And so I'm going to stick with the original plan. I go all in. She grabs her chips, and her soldiers line up for one more bonsai charge into the pot, suffering the same fate as the rest of her chips. I wanted to see her hand. She said, I called you, so I show my aces, and unfortunately, we don't get to see what she had, but fortunately, we scoop the pot, and it is a beautiful start to a session. Scoop a nice amount of chips, tip the dealer, and the very next hand on the small blind, pick up pocket queens. Thank goodness I came back, didn't miss my blinds, 529 already in my stack. And right away, the action is going to get pumped up this hand. The under the gun player opens for 20. This under the gun player is a 2-5 pro. I never see him without chips. This large opening bet could be a product of a strong hand, or it could be a product of just being used and waiting for the 2-5 game. We get one more caller. The middle position player, who's another solid player, action folds to me. I'm inclined to 3-bet here, but definitely with my position and the strength of the players behind me, I'm going to put in a 3-bet, and it's going to be a sizable one. Not quite 4x. I make it 70. I'm going to have a really hard decision if I get raised, especially by the 2-5 pro. But he yields, throws his hand away. The middle position player folds as well. And I want a cool $40 in an uncontested pot. 2 minutes and 2 hands later, I look at Queen 10 off my would-be nemesis, the first hand. Action's folded to me. I'm going to open up to 15, put pressure on the blinds, try to win them. The button mucks. The small blind is not intimidated. He makes the call. The big blind steps to the side. And we go heads up to the flop. It comes ace high. I have the range advantage. He capped his range by just calling pre-flop. I have all the ace kings, all the aces, a lot of the ace queen suited. I make it 15, trying to just get him to fold. But he has other plans. He makes the call. We go to the turn. It's a 7 better for him. Although I guess my cutoff opening range is wide enough that we're both going to have a lot of middling suited connectors and sets. Let me know what you guys think about this. I'm still learning these things, but I'm not giving up yet. I make it 35. And 35 I expect to get through. That is, of course, unless my opponent is holding an ace. And when he makes the call, I'm pretty certain he is. Why would he stick around from the small blind, putting in all this money, unless he had a hand worth getting to the river with? Another 7 peels on the river, and I decide I'm going to give this one up. Play my queen high, and he flips over ace-4 of clubs. Perfectly reasonable hand to play from the small blind and stick around at the river. I exploded out of the blocks with my first 2 hands, got a little greedy and entitled with the third one. Lost my chips down a little bit. Don't forget, drop a like on the video. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for your interaction. It goes a long way, so I always appreciate those likes, those comments, those subscriptions. We've gotten 3 solid hands in the first 15 minutes of the session, but then we have to wait an hour for the next decent hand. Ace-Jack offsuit in the hijack, 519 on my stack. There's a straddle on the button. The under-the-gun player limps. Action folds around to me. I'm eager to get back in on the action. I'm going to go a little bit larger with the straddle. I make the price 30, and 30 is a price that a lot of people are willing to call. The cutoff makes the call. The button straddle makes the call. The under-the-gun player completes 124 already up for grabs, but I'm going to have to get through this gauntlet of players. It's going to be very dependent on the flop. It comes out king high. There is a jack, and I have a backdoor combo draw, nut flush draw. I could hit the nut straight draw as well. I'm also blocking the nut flush. The ace of hearts is a potential card to bluff with. I go with a small sizing, $25. This bet doesn't make a lot of sense. I'm not sure what my goal was with it. I wanted to bet something, but I didn't want to bet big enough to where I'd regret having to fold to a raise. I don't think I get any worse hands to fold, though, and I get called by the cutoff. And the button and the under-the-gun player come along. Very cheap price, 204 in the pot, bringing me a few more outs in the form of a queen. But the under-the-gun player decides it's his turn to take over the action. He jams all in for 68. Not a wise move, in my opinion. You only have $68 left. Surely someone behind you is going to bet, and then you can jam. But taking over the initiative like this just screams strength. Maybe he's scared of the heart draw, but $68 isn't going to push any heart draws off anyways. Unfortunately, being squeezed with 2 players behind me, I have to make the fold. The cutoff makes the call. The cutoff probably shows off his jacks. The river does bring in the flush, and the under-the-gun player did hit the nuts on the turn. Ace-queen offsuit, jammed when he got there. My ace-jack was in a lot more trouble than I ever knew. 464 on my stack, and I get pocket nines in the middle position. Action folds to me. I open it up to 12. Only the button makes the call. We go to the flop. It's ace-high. This is an older gentleman with a tighter range. Definitely could have hit this. I decide to send the action over to him, check, and he starts grabbing chips. He's going to put out a bet. He makes it 15. Casually tosses him out there. I don't think he'd be betting unless he hit the flop, but I also think that his hand's not that strong, and with some pressure, I can get him off of even like ace-10. And so that's the line I decide to take. Put in a raise, and a pretty substantial raise for the pot size. I make it 75. He's going to have to really like his hand to stay in the pot, and he doesn't. He makes a fold, and my little bluff pays off, risking a lot to win a small amount, but sometimes overbet bluffs are the way to go. I finally get a dry spell of cards, fold away a bunch of junk, realize that the stacks at this table are not that big, there's not a lot of action, so I scout out a new table, rack up my chips, and head over. 495 in my stack, and this table was good when I showed up. Goes south really fast, the big stacks get up and leave, and of course I'm going through another big dry spell. Just naturally lose my chips down with small hands, about $100 to 388, and then finally a seat on the table I've been trying to get to opens up, and so I do another table change. But this is the table to be at. They're gambling, they're shoving stacks in, they're doing bomb pots. And right when I sit down, I get involved in a bomb pot. King 4 of spades, $120 in the pot, and we're going straight to the flop, and it is a monster flop for me. 2 spades, gut shot straight draw, combo draw, but I'm first to act. And so I go ahead and check it. I'm expecting to do a check raise. Surely someone's going to want to take a stab at this. Bomb pots are dangerous. You could really invest a massive part or your whole stack in when you didn't even expect to, but that's the nature of bomb pots. It folds around to the button, and the button puts out a bet. My plan was to raise, but I try to be risk adverse in these bomb pots, and I just got to this table. I don't want to lose my chips on the first hand, so I just make the call. I think this was a mistake. My hand's way too strong to be this passive, but I am a little nervous that I'm not that deep, and I may end up committing myself to being all in with an unmade hand. We get one other caller. The low jack comes along, $240 already in this pot. We go to the turn. It pairs the board with another 9. My hand has gone significantly worse. That's like the opposite of one of my outs. And so once again, I take a passive line of checking. The low jack checks. Action's back on the button who bet 40 on the flop. What's he going to do on the turn? He's got a lot of chips, so it's not all in for him, but it would be all in for both of us. He puts in $350.
$350. Wow.
That massive bet is the final nail in my coffin. I'm completely priced out of this, so I make the fold, but the table demands to see his hand, and he ends up showing it to a 6-9 offsuit. A raise on the flop probably would have done it for me. The next hand I pick up is 6-5 of hearts on the button, 333 in my stack. The middle position player opens to 15. I decide I'm on the button, suit connector. It's a little low, but I'm going to make the call. The big blind defends, 3-way action to the flop, 46 in the pot. It comes out ace high, but there's 5 and a 6 giving me bottom 2 pair. There are 2 clubs. There are straight draws. I need to protect my hand. I'm going to raise, but I don't get the opportunity to. It checks through to me, I'm going to protect my hand. I do a half-size pot bet, 20. No one is scared. The big blind calls. The original better pre-flop makes the call. We're headed to the turn. And it's a 10. It brings in ace-10, but not much else. But action checks back around to me, and I need to protect my hand. There's straight draws. There's 2 flush draws. And the fact that both these players called the flop, checked the turn, makes me inclined to believe that someone is drawing. So I need to make it a little bit bigger. I go 60. And 60 is going to work. Both players fold, and I scoop a pot, rebuilding my stack slowly but surely, just over the $400 mark, a little over 3 hours into the session. And the next hand I pick up is ace-10 offsuit in the cutoff. Action folds to me. I open to 12. The button calls. The small blind defends. The big blind completes. We're going 4 ways to the flop, 48 in the pot, and it comes ace-high. Checks around to me again. I'm going to put in a small bet. I feel pretty safe on this board. I make it 15. The button makes the call. Everyone else folds. We go to the turn, and it brings 4 to a straight. I don't think my opponent has a 5, especially since the board is blocking a lot of the 5s, except for like 6-5 suited. But he could potentially have ace-jack as well. And if I bet, he might fold a lot of his hands that I'm trying to get value from. So I decided to check over at him, do a check-call strategy. And he's interested. He doesn't want to check back. He wants to put in a bet. He makes it 45. This is a very interesting bet because when you look at this board, you don't see a lot of natural bluffs. Maybe like 4 or 5 suited is the only one I can think of. There's only 3 combinations of that. His value hands would be like an ace-jack, 2 pair sets, and any 5s. So he seems to have a lot more value here than bluffs. But I think a lot of players would check back here without a 5. He's basically telling me he has a 5. I don't believe him. I make the call. The only 5 that's not blocked is 5-6 suited. And we go to the river. It pairs the board. It's time to stick with the plan. If I bet and get raised, that would be a disaster. I could throw out a small blocker bet, but I think it would be unnecessary. So I decided to check the action over to my opponent. And my opponent is shuffling his chips quickly. I've noticed a connection between the speed that you shuffle chips with the amount of energy and thought that's going on in your head. He's obviously thinking a lot about something. Typically, when I see people move chips quickly, it's because they have a made hand, which throws some doubt on my plan. But there is $243 in the pot, so it's going to depend on his bet size, and he decides on a bet size of 75. I have to call 75 to win over $300. This is a very enticing bet. I only have to be right once out of every 5 times. And I do have a strong bluff catcher. My bluff catcher is like at the top of my range. I decide this hand's too strong to fold.
Alright, I'll call. That's up.
I caught him speeding. He turns over a bluff, bluffed on his gut shot on the turn, continued through on the river. I thought it through and feel pretty great about the hand, and also feel great that I'm back up to my stack size after the second hand of my session. Whenever I win big early, I think to myself, I should just go home. My hourly is never going to be topped. Now, hours later, I'm sitting here with 558 in my stack, and things are starting to heat up, but I'm starting to get tired. It is late. I pick up ace-jack offsuit in middle position. Action folds to me. I make it 15. The cutoff calls. The small blind and big blind defend. 4 ways to the flop, 60 in the pot. And I end up with top pair, top kicker on a decently connected board. Action checks to me, and I throw out 20. Only a third pot size bet. I probably should have made it larger in order to defend against draws. The cutoff throws in 20. Action's on the small blind. He grabs chips. He drops 20 in the pot. The big blind gets out of the way. We're headed to the turn. It's a 9. Only brings in jack 9. I feel pretty safe about that. Didn't bring in a heart, which is fantastic. The small blind checks to me. And my main concern is balancing getting action out of jacks and middle pocket pairs, maybe a ace 4, and protecting against draws. I go with another smaller sizing, but I think this one's all right. I make it 50. The cutoff folds immediately. Action's on the small blind. Will this bet get through? And the answer is yes. The small blind folds, scooping another pot up to 643. Check the video description to get your Cold Hard Cash Pirate's Treasure Card Protector. This is something that the most interesting man or woman in the world would be carrying around in their pocket. It looks beautiful with the WSOP chips. Get yours today. It's getting late. I'm feeling a little worn out about this session. This is still a good table, but I decide, you know what? You've had your ups, you've had your downs. Rack up those chips, take them to the cage, and turn them into cold, hard cash. In for 300, out for 602 for a profit of $302. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Kato out. On your screen right now, you have 2 options, 2 videos, the left video, the right video. They're both fantastic, but the question is, which one are you going to choose? Left, right, left, right? The decision is in your hands.